Welcome to Visions Unlimited. I'm so glad that you joined us because we've got a fantastic show. We have a fascinating guest, and he wrote a book entitled Angels in the Silicon, and you'll hear all about it. And this is, wow, it's so many issues that I think that we in the Silicon Valley really need to know. And his name is Richard Theodore Kusiolek, pardon me. Anyway, Richard, it's so nice to meet you.
Thank
and
you
it's
so
a
much,
pleasure
Claire.
to have this is so exciting because we have some time to talk about your book and what you've done, your background, and just a little bit. Well, let's start with you. When you were a little boy, were you writing books?
Yes, actually, I was always very interested in writing. I had a great passion for writing, and I started at the age of 14 to write in my journal. That's started my writing quest.
So I think the journal then started helping you develop content over a lifetime, and it's been amazing what you've put into this book. And so let's talk about what are the issues in this particular book, Angels in the Silicon.
Well, this is really a very exciting book about Silicon Valley. I refer to it as a real truth book about Silicon Valley. I really look at the economics, the business model of Silicon Valley, the outsourcing elements, as well as the effect of globalization on Silicon Valley.
And how were you connected?
Well, I was connected with Silicon Valley. I came here with, like a lot of people who came to Silicon Valley, with a dream. You know, the dream was to start a company and become wealthy. That was my dream.
That is, I think, so many people's dream, isn't it?
I think so. You know, the Silicon Valley has always been a great magnet for people who have ideas, and they believe very strongly that those ideas will be supported and also help overall the community.
And so many people are, you know, because we have such a diverse community and with many, many different cultures. You want to speak about that issue?
Well, you know, I've had a great experience. I worked with 3 Indian companies. I was a general manager for a Chinese company and spent some time in China as well. I lived in Japan for about 4 years. So I think I was pretty culturized to the type of people who come to Silicon Valley to work.
Yeah. It's an interesting word, culturized, but it certainly states what exactly, I mean, you don't have to explain it, but so in your book, you talked about the employment and unemployment and how this all connects with the companies.
Yeah, definitely. I took a very close look at the outsourcing model and whether or not that really benefited American high-tech workers. And that was kind of a quest I had because I was very familiar with the business process of outsourcing, and I learned a lot of important conclusions. And the key one is the fact that many of the IT companies in Silicon Valley actually created their own campuses overseas. For example, Microsoft, Cisco, Oracle, and they actually trained local people in these particular very unique skills. And then eventually they came to Silicon Valley to work, but at a lower wage than American IT workers.
I see. Okay. So what specifically in your book, how do you present it? Present these issues about the different cultures?
Well, that's a great question, and actually the way I looked at it, I created a character who went through all the, what I consider the key social economic experiences starting in the 1960s all the way through some of the Silicon Valley great surges in startups, and then bringing it to the level of those who were working with companies, American high-tech companies, and realizing that a lot of those jobs were being, taken by the overseas workers. So that kind of bothered me because I then also looked at the high divorce rate. And that was troubling.
It's interesting how you connect that.
Yeah, I really connect that because we're, you know, Silicon Valley runs on this concept of boom and bust. So when you go through that cycle, you then have to relearn the skill set for another skill set, another innovation cycle. So you have to be very flexible.
Well, Silicon Valley certainly is the place where to innovate and reinvent and recycle and so on and so forth. But you know, you talked about the character. Let's talk about the characters in your book. Who
Right.
are the characters? Are they the angels? Explain who the angels are and the characters.
Well, I kind of use angels as a metaphor for children. So the characters are two children who are subjected to a fragmentation process created by a divorce. And they're also their journey and the journey of the main character.
And the main character, what's that main character's name?
Well, that is a gentleman by the name of Thaddeus Sikorsky.
Okay.
And
Now, is that kind of who you were, or is that just a...
well, you know, that's a very interesting question. Of course, you know, writers write based on their experience. And so there's a little bit of my experience, you know, in the character, of course. But I
kind of lived the character.
kind of lived a little bit of the life of the character. And I kind of look at the book as what I refer to as creative nonfiction.
Creative nonfiction.
Right.
That's a great term.
Right.
That is a great term. And I think that many authors kind of do the same thing, but maybe in different ways. But they present whatever is going on in their life and how they see it, their perspective.
Right. Well, you know, I just wanted to comment on this. I kind of wrote this book in the way of Tolstoy. In other words, the character will be in one particular place, and then the character will be thinking back to another event.
Oh, I see.
And so it's kind of like the character is kind of thinking about an event, but in a sense being in one particular reality.
Okay, would you like to elaborate on that?
Well, like for example...
For example.
Yeah,
Yes.
for example, the character will be in a scene and then start philosophizing about how that all came about and looking at how do these events occur from an economic sense and also from a political sense.
Well, I think that there's many authors, many people writing books. And your particular style of writing books, I think that you have really addressed many things in your life. Also, I remember reading a little bit about in the synopsis about politics, and let's talk about some of these other. I think that I was just fascinated because you were mentioning several topics, characters, people that we all have connected to. Even the president.
Right. The president is involved in the story. And again, I said the novel is creative nonfiction. So the president is involved, as well as some individuals who were very well known in Silicon Valley. You know, from in one particular case, an attorney who was a psychopath. And so the main character
Sounds like a mystery.
Yeah, the main character, kind of interfaces with this individual. So it seems like the character is connecting with very important political people and very important events in Silicon Valley. So it's a very, very, very exciting book to read because it shows a different perspective of Silicon Valley. That's what I wanted to do.
Right. How do you think Silicon Valley will be? Can you imagine what Silicon Valley is going to be, say, in 25 years?
Well, this is a great question, and again, I don't have a crystal ball, but I can say one thing. The Silicon Valley is not going to be the same type of dynamic environment for innovation. And I believe...
And why is that?
Well, because a lot of the core competencies that originated in Silicon Valley have been outsourced. And we
Okay.
hear this, if you look at India, India is building their own Silicon Valley. China is building their own Silicon Valley.
Well, I think so. Excuse me. How the world is just kind of like shrinking in a sense, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, globalization has brought a lot of good things, but some things that have not been good for America. I'll give you an example, if I could.
Good.
Is we're graduating per year about 60,000 engineers. China per year is 400,000.
Really
400,000.
amazing.
Again, you have to look at the worthiness of their degrees, but that's a huge number.
Yes.
And we're not really meeting those standards, and it's unfortunate.
Well, so what's going to turn? So what do you think will change that? Do you think we'll come to a point where someone's going to kind of like come down bring down the hammer or something? What's
Right.
going to happen? What has to happen?
Well, the reality, and I think even today people are talking about the truth. We have to kind of downsize outsourcing, and we have to revamp the curriculums of the universities and the colleges, even at the high school level, to prepare our students, for a very competitive environment, but also to innovate here in Silicon Valley. Still can be a innovation engine, but we have to bring back, and we have to have the curriculum in the schools. I mean, connected with Silicon Valley companies.
Well, I think that one of the problems is, I guess, the tuition.
Tuition is an issue, but I think
Okay. Why are we not? Why are our standards lower than some of the other countries? I don't understand that.
Well, let's be candid. I mean, today there's a belief that you deserve a college degree, that the college degree is a precursor to a good economic life. That's a false vision.
Is that just in California?
Well, I would say that's across the United States, but I think
All right.
more so in California. There, we have
But
that
if
belief.
we have so many people here in California, especially the Silicon Valley, from other countries, do they also have the same attitude as the students who were born here?
Well, they all have the attitude that when they come to America, they're going to be successful in the sense of economic success.
Oh.
And there's a strong belief, and this is unfortunate. There's a strong belief that the overseas, high-tech workers are better in the sense than American IT workers. And as I mentioned before, I worked with 3 Indian IT companies, and I also was a general manager for a Chinese company out of Hong Kong, outsourcing company, and also another outsourcing company out of San Ramon. They
Now, excuse me for interrupting
Sure.
for just a second, just a thought.
Sure.
If you were working for these companies that were from that had other countries or companies from other countries, was there a communication problem? Language problem?
No, I never had that problem.
Oh, okay. All right.
Believe me, you can always get a translator.
All right.
That's not a problem. But I just want to emphasize one thing. It's the attitude that they bring, that American workers are lazy and they are unskilled. I've heard this
Really?
consistently throughout Silicon Valley, not only from Indian workers, but also from Chinese workers. They all believe this. And I believe this is a kind of a false narrative that is placed upon American IT workers, and they begin to believe this, that they are not as good.
And where do you think that comes from, or why? What's the?
Well, that's kind of, I'll be candid with you. I think it's kind of a corporate narrative that has been, especially, we're talking about H1s now. We have to have more H1s.
What's an
So,
H1?
That's a visa for
I see. Okay. All right.
overseas worker to come to the United States. But I think that's is being propelled by a lot of the startups, because when you do a startup, you have to have young minds, you have to have excited people, believe in the vision. And so there is this belief that, only overseas workers have that energy. I think that's
Oh,
a
well.
false narrative.
All right. Well, that's unfortunate, but maybe you can. Maybe you're the person that's going to turn that around.
Well, I think if people should read this book,
Okay.
that
Well.
will maybe perhaps, and that's why I wrote the book, maybe it'll
Okay.
stimulate people
All right.
to kind of get back into our, Silicon Valley core competencies.
Okay. Well, let's go back to the book.
Sure.
All right. Why don't you hold the book
My pleasure.
and let's talk about your book. Now, there are some other characters in then I read the outline. There's something about the Swirling family.
Yeah, that's another, again, creative nonfiction.
Okay.
So there is a family involved, of course, and then this family, of course, works in Silicon Valley, but they work in the educational industry, and so I kind of built that around the angels, in that sense. So I created a family, and of course they had children, and then this family, of course, had a divorce situation, and so I used that as a tool to bring out a message.
So that's where the angels come from.
The angels come from this fragmented, fragmented family, if you will.
Okay, I see. That's where that comes from. And you have also you have the daughter and the son, etc. And then you have an attorney. You mentioned something about an attorney before. You really a Superior Court judge?
Right.
How does that play in?
Well, of course, when you go through Superior Court, for family, law, you have judges. And you have some judges in Silicon Valley who are impartial and follow the law, and we have some that don't. So, of course...
Does that have anything to do with the way our laws are written?
Well, I think a lot of it, seriously, may not be the laws, but I think it's kind of an attitude. It's what I call kind of judicial fiat. The judicial fiat follows the political narrative of the time. So, the political narrative is single-parent families are good.
Interesting, interesting.
I don't agree with that, of course.
Well, it's so interesting how you've brought in so many different characters and these issues that are so much a part of our world today.
Right.
And a thought that I had earlier was that California, especially this area, it seems like our weather is absolutely perfect compared to so many other areas.
Sure. Yes.
So why wouldn't people really want to come here? Of course, I would think so. But the cost of living has really zoomed, in a sense. How does it compare to other states, other areas? Is there a Silicon Valley in, like, Arizona, in New York, in Florida?
Well, I think maybe I could give some figures here. In San Francisco, per square foot price is about $428. For San Jose, it's about $382. However, in Houston, Texas, it's only $84. So this relates to rentals and mortgages and so forth. Austin, Texas is becoming a Silicon Valley, if you will. I think Austin, Texas is a Silicon Valley.
Oh, interesting. So Silicon Valley is more of a kind of like a term than a place, in a sense.
Well, everyone wants to emulate Silicon Valley.
All right.
But in my opinion, there's only one Silicon Valley.
Okay.
So the book is saying, let's save Silicon Valley here in California.
All right. All right. And so then these other wannabes, Silicon Valley, they'd have to learn from us.
They have to learn from us, but as long as we can continue to bring in good people to move, startups. But of course, as you know, startups have really moved from, computing platforms and software to alternative energy. I mean, we have one startup that is making, battery cars at $120,000. We have another, venture capital firm that's supporting launch rockets, the SpaceX, And so we're getting away from our core competency. And so this is what I'm really concerned about. The book really is trying to say we have got to focus on our core competencies that really made Silicon Valley so strong and was a magnet for the best of the world to come here.
Okay. So that's the objective, the main objective of the book?
You know what? I hope I hope nobody really, when they read the book, it's going to be very subtle.
All right.
So I don't keep repeating that message, but I
All right.
let the reader decide at the end of the chapter.
I see. Okay. All right. Well, good enough. Would you like to elaborate a little bit more on that?
Well, again,
As readers are from different countries,
Sure.
and they're going to have different perspectives. So, what do you think?
well, I think different cultures, when they read this book, I think they'll see part of their own experience within some elements of it, because everyone is affected by the human dimension of family life, and then the fragmentation of those families, and then also all of those things that occur during the learning process, the development of their intellect. So I think this book will give all cultures a very interesting insight and maybe a correction into Silicon Valley.
Interesting. Recently, I guess a couple years ago, I became a host mother for a Japanese student, and I tried that out for a couple years, and I found it very interesting because her culture was so different than mine, but we got along very well, and she would make comments about the boys
Oh, okay.
because she was a college student,
Right.
right? And she would make comments about the boys, especially the ones that wear tattoos.
Right. Right.
But it was really fascinating to start listening to a person a student from another country express their opinion of our students here.
Right.
So I guess there is a big difference.
Well, let me just say one thing. I taught graduate school at San Jose State, San Francisco State, and Hayward State. So I had really a great experience. Actually, one of my classes had over 50, 60 students.
Wow.
So I had a chance to really see a great range of students from different cultures. And so I did, based on that, I drew some conclusions vis-a-vis the types of students, American students, who are coming through the high school system, K through 12, the high schools and the universities.
Wow. And so how did that
I knew you were going to ask me a question.
You're reading my mind.
Absolutely. Well, let me just say this. We have some good students and we have some bad students. I think on a cultural fit, a lot of the Asian cultures and the Indian culture, for example, they believe in strong families, and they believe in a strong educational foundation, for their children. And I think a lot of that is lacking for American families. I took a look at the divorce rate, before this interview, and it is huge. Silicon Valley has a very high divorce rate.
Yes.
And again, this is, part of how do we regain the intellectual, the future intellectual capacity of our students. We have to maintain strong families, and also so they have an environment to learn.
That kind of like triggers a thought because of what's going on in the courts right now as far as the gay families, and
Yes.
and I don't know whether that plays a part, but also you mentioned Asian and Indian. What about Hispanic?
Well, I spent some time in Mesoamerica.
Okay.
When I graduated from graduate school, I was very interested in the Mayans and Incas, Toltecs, Olmecs. So I went down to Mexico. I went down to Peru and to study their culture. Those cultures also believe very strongly in strong families and education for their children. So, that culture is very strong, in regards to the family.
Yes. Yes. Well, all right. Back to your book again.
Yes,
Back to your
please.
book.
I want people to really look into this book.
Yes, they
Angels
certainly
and the
will be
Soldiers.
educated. What have I missed as far in this interview talk? Because we're going to start running out of time. We have just a couple minutes.
Right.
What have I missed
Well, you know, to be candid, we haven't missed anything. You've
in
done
the
a
interview?
you've done a very great job and given me the opportunity to talk about this book.
Yes.
It's really an exciting book. It's something. It's, in my opinion, it's one of those books that's a must-read if you're in Silicon Valley, and you really want to know the truth about the process here.
Yes. And what I really like about your book is it's an eye catcher. It is definitely an eye catcher with the little angels up there, and angels, the metaphor of angels in the first place. You don't know whether it's angels for funding or angels in heaven or what. So it is definitely an eye catcher, and it will trigger the curiosity. Well, I honestly believe that you'll be very successful.
Thank you.
You have a fascinating book, and you have so much really extremely valuable information to offer people, and whatever their culture is, because we all have to live together. We have to understand the reality of
Right.
what's going on, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I want to thank you very much personally. You've been very kind to allow me to, come on the show, and you've asked some very good questions. And again, thank you so much.
Oh, well, it's my pleasure. Believe me, it's really my pleasure. I have so much to learn from you. I think we all do. I think we all do, really. You're very well educated. And I hope that people really get, take advantage of this opportunity to read the book, have you maybe as a speaker.
Oh, great. I'm always open. I have a lot of passion. You cannot write a book like this if you don't have passion. It takes a long time.
Yes, and a speaker, an author, and wow, it is fascinating to have you. So I just I hope that other people, if they have a book they'd like to be interviewed, I love interviewing because I learn so much. But it's an opportunity where we here at Visions Unlimited have an opportunity to introduce information to the community. So I want to talk to you, please. Clare Mullin, Visions Unlimited. Let me know what you want to talk about. Show me your book if you're an author. Contact me at 6colors at SBC Global. Thanks. Bye. Yeah, that was good. That was good. It's like there's so much in here that it's...
I was nervous.